Okay. So, you need to sell more. Coaches, those of you in high ticket, consultants, you know that there's a part of you that's holding back in that sales process. But you also know in order to sell more, you have to sell more. But the idea of selling makes you feel all ugh and gross inside, right? Does that sound familiar? For those of you who don't know me, my name is Jana Nixa. I'm the Authentic Sales Coach. And today I'm going to be talking about how to sell in an entirely different way. Okay. And I should know because I spent over 21 years as a top performing sales executive. And what I can say after 40,000 sales calls and millions sold is that the way that you think that makes you go, ugh, and all of that stuff, that's just one way to sell. It's not the way. And because of this, because it is so embedded in our programming in the matrix and in the tradition of sales, is it's very much a huge block for a lot of people around, can I charge more? Can I sell high ticket? And just selling in general. And so I wanted to talk to that today because today I want to talk about 3 different shifts you can make to really start to sell in an entirely different way. And of course, when we do it and empower ourselves and find our authentically aligned approach, then you're going to make more sales, right? And so let's begin. Okay. So here's the thing about sales first and foremost. And that is, like I was saying before, people think it's done in a certain way because it's in our culture, the used car salesman, all of that. People think of sales as pushy and convincing and manipulating energy. And I'm actually here to tell you it's the opposite. And I know I told you before, I have a lot of experience actually selling in this more powerful and authentic way. And so if you think about, there's something called the scale of consciousness by David Hawkins, where he actually measures the vibration of different emotions and what their frequency is at. And so, like lower, it's kind of like low vibe, right? The lower the vibration, the lower the frequency, and the emotion would be things like shame and guilt. And then as you work your way up, you work into things like sadness and anger. And then you continue to work your way up even further, and you're into things like neutrality. And so, anyway, as we work our way up further, there's a center point line between the forceful nature of humanity or the ego and the fear. And then at that neutral point above that line is when you're in your power and in your heart space. Okay. So, for all practical purposes, what I want you to start to think about, especially if you're one of those conscious entrepreneurs out there, is that anything below the line, that manipulation, that convincing, that forcing, the old traditional sales model is full of fear and force. But of course, there's an entirely different approach that's centered in your heart. And so, step 1 is to open up to the idea that there's an entirely opposite approach to sales than what you've been taught. Okay. And instead of thinking sales in that convincing energy, I want you to start to think of sales as helping somebody make a decision that's really important to them about their dreams that they already desire to make. And so, what you're doing in that sales conversation is you're actually guiding them through the process and helping them release their fears around it. So when you see it, can you just open up to the idea that when you take your ego out of it and you make it not about you, that it opens up to this beautiful experience of service. This is where that whole sales as service things comes from. But that's kind of gotten lost in translation. It's turned into sales as service. Now buy my stuff, right? Like it's been hijacked by the ego. But when you can think of it in that way, that you're actually just guiding somebody through a process of helping them make a decision that they already desire to make, can you see how that would be a service? And the key is to keep your ego out of it, right? So, first and foremost, understanding that there's an entirely different way to sell that has nothing to do with your ego. So, when we can move into that and the acceptance that there's an entirely different way to do this, can we also start to make the second shift, which is this isn't about me as the coach or you as the coach or consultant, the seller. This is about the person, the client, the person that's purchasing. And I don't mean just so much that we understand them enough just to tell them what they need to hear in order to buy our thing. I mean, you take your attachment, your ego, your expectations out of it fully so that you can show up in the energy of to be of service and to fully listen to them and not let that fear of, oh, I got to make the sale, or what if I don't make the sale, or oh, they don't like me, or whatever's going on up here. And we take it and we ground ourselves. We become more present back in the moment and start speaking from our heart. Okay. Can you just imagine if you started to approach your sales calls in this way, and less of the, what can I get from this person, or what can I say to make this person do what I want them to do, but instead speaking from your heart with full presence and actually listening to them and validating for them and holding space for them? Because chances are, if they're on a discovery call, strategy session, sales call, like whatever you want to call it with you, they have a problem that's really important to them that they want solved. And so when you start to open up to sales in this way, first by acknowledging that there's an entirely different way to do it, and then fully making it about them and not you, and dropping your attachment around it, that brings me, when you combine those two things, to shift number 3. And that is, the more you sell, the more you sell. And so if you can make peace with what you think sales is supposed to look like and fully embrace and step into your power around what the authentic sales approach looks like, then you're going to have a much more success, right? You not only are you going to differentiate yourself in terms of just the customer and the client experience, like, you get to offer them this service. Just think about, like, some people, all we ever want is to be seen, heard, and validated. And so if we can navigate a sales conversation and truly be that way and listen instead of waiting to talk, just that alone is going to make people want to buy from you, because it is such a different energy. And I mean, this is where the energy enters the equation, because as we talked about before, if you're thinking about Hawkins scale, they're no longer experiencing the energy of force. They're experiencing the energy of your power, of your heart, of your compassion, of your surrender, of your trust, and of your love for them, instead of the egoic, what can I say to get them to make the sale? And so when you open up to this, you're going to sell more because it feels good to you. I mean, think about it. Let me know in the comments, like, don't you enjoy doing things that actually feel good? So if you can make peace with what you think sales has to look like, open up your heart and start to practice this idea of, actually, it isn't about me, it's about them, and then go about doing it, it will absolutely change your business. And so just to kind of open up, this is my first YouTube live here. And as the authentic sales coach, I wanted to talk about the idea that there's an entirely different way to approach this. And so one really, really interesting piece of this whole pie, when you're looking at this Hawkins scale and you're looking at, love vibrates at a certain frequency and joy vibrates at a certain frequency, and even enlightenment vibrates at a certain, I think it calibrates at like 700 or something. I could be way off on that. But here's a really interesting question. Do you know what vibrates at 200 times higher than love on the Hawkins scale? It's authenticity. So your superpower in this sales conversation, and frankly, why so many other sales approaches don't work, is because it doesn't feel like you. It's not how you would say it. You don't want to force people. Open-hearted, conscious coaches, if they're really being honest with themselves, they don't want to have to like beg, force, and manipulate people into working with them. And so when you can own that in your sales process and truly be authentically you and show up for the person in front of you as a guide to help guide them through the decision-making process, it will absolutely transform your business. So I will leave you with that. I just wanted to come on here today and talk about these 3 shifts so that you can just start to open up to the possibility that we've had it all wrong for a very long time. And I can tell you, when my clients embrace this process, their business, their sales, their closing rate doubles, triples. They start selling like overnight success, even though I don't believe in overnight success. It's really small tweaks to big peaks when it comes to selling more in your high ticket offer space. So with that, I'd love to know what questions came up for you. I am a generator in human design. And what that means is I really like to respond. So if my share here today prompted questions, I would love to hear what they are, because I'd happy to clarify. A few examples of what I hear is like, how do I not care about, how do I practice non-attachment? How do I do anti-pressure, Jana? How do I lean out? What does that actually look like, and how can I do it? So if you want me to create a video on that, let me know in the comments below, and I will see you next week. Thanks so much for watching.